Welcome to the Children's Book Author Podcast. I'm your host, Elena Page. If you write for children, or it's always been your dream to, you're in the right place. As the children's book author, I'm on a quest to discover everything there is about writing, publishing, and marketing children's books, as well as how to supercharge my creativity, skyrocket my productivity, and absolutely everything else there is to know about how to be the best, so you can be too. Join me as I interview fabulous guests and become the children's book author. Welcome back to another episode of the Children's Book Author Podcast with me, Elena. Today I had the immense pleasure of interviewing Jen Storer. Of course, I didn't interview her today. I interviewed her, I think it was back in April, and Jen is literally an award-winning, commercially successful and critically acclaimed Australian children's author. And now she mentors, nurtures and guides creative souls from all around the world with all the wonderful work that she does. And we get so deep into the creative process. And it was just so timely for me to come back to this episode and edit it, because I've been doing the hashtag 40-day creative challenge, and it's been life-changing, which sounds ridiculous because, like we're creatives, right? But getting my kind of day-to-day act in order and really positioning myself in my own life as the making part being the most important part again, I think I really lost that during, I'm not going to say the C word because it'll ruin this audio forever, but during the C years, yes, we'll call them the C years, and that's a C for cat, the C years. I think I lost that a lot through my day-to-day off. I claimed it back. I am, as at the time of recording this, on day 34, I think, of the Creative Challenge. I wrote the entire book of, now I have to remember this complicated title. It is The Curious Creatures of 77 Sycamore Street. Yeah, and it's an old series, and you'll hear me going on in this podcast episode about being scared to, I'm always scared. I know there's a theme going on, and I'm always getting free counselling from my guests. So, the real reason I get them on is self-help, of course, and hopefully you benefit from that as well. In this interview, I actually talk about how I'm scared to write The Magician's Academy, and I actually did write that, though it is gathering dust, needing the next round of edits. So I will start back on that very, very soon as I finish the Creative Challenge. But I actually did finish this other manuscript in I don't even know, maybe 20 days, because I didn't write every day of the challenge. Maybe I'm underestimating it, maybe 25 days. In any case, I wrote the entire manuscript in 25 days, which is kind of crazy given that it took me, I don't even know, like a year, let's say 6 years, because it was gathering dust in the ethers to write The Magician's Academy. And a lot of that was because I was scared that it would be really shit. And this process that I recently undertook has actually taught me that, do you know what? It doesn't really matter if it's shit, as long as it's done. As long as it's done, then we can make it better when we edit and do all sorts of other things. And we talk about all this with Jen, which is just incredible. The creative journey is a really interesting one. At the moment here in Australia, I don't know if it's happening in the rest of the world, it's Book Week. And so many of the authors are out doing school visits. They're plastered everywhere on Instagram and everything. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, am I jealous? Am I envious? Am I supposed to be doing those? What's happening here? And instead, I'm kind of doing the exact opposite. I'm actually rugged up away from the world in my own little creative bubble, doing my little creative challenge, which probably no one cares about, and nor should they. It's really just for me. and not doing school visits. And then I think, oh, is it the wrong thing to do? Should I have been out there doing school visits too? But the writing career is a really long career. It's a lot. Well, for me, it's, let's say, the rest of my life. We'll aim for that, right? I mean, I do have a tendency to change jobs a little fast, but hey, let's aim for the rest of our life. In saying that, right now, I really want to get my act together in terms of getting manuscripts, knowing my process, finishing series that I've had going on for way too long. And if I go to do something new, like those school visits, which I still do want to do, I do, then it's going to detract me from that. And then maybe I'll just have the books that I have. But in my mind, the absolute most important thing for me personally as a children's book author is making sure that I finish the books that I have in my head before anything else. Of course, it's not all or nothing, so I can be writing and doing a lot of other things, but it's always good to add new things once you've kind of mostly mastered the old things, and then you can kind of add a new stress into the mix. If you add too many stresses into the mix, like, if you're listening to all these episodes and you're like, okay, I've got to do school visits, market stalls, I've got to get onto advertising, I have to try to find this book a publisher, I need to get a daily writing routine, then you'll burn out or maybe water down your efforts across so many different areas. There's this really fantastic book, I may have mentioned it before, called The One Thing, and I often come back to it. What is the one thing that you can do today that makes the most difference to your business in the future or to your growth as a creative in the future? And for me, that's coming back to my intuition, my particular creative process, and feeling okay with what I put out in the world, even if it's shit. And, who's to say what's shit and what's not shit? But you got to own your shit, right? So I'm owning my stuff. If it's not your cup of tea, so be it. Will it improve? Will I improve? Of course, because we're all works in process. But part of owning that creative confidence that we're going to talk about so much today, you're going to listen to in today's podcast, is about owning your voice and your style and what wants to come through you, even if you've got a different idea in your mind. So that's enough from me. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast. As always, your support and you listening is so appreciated. Otherwise, it would just be me talking to myself, which is usually what happens. And I hope you gain massive value from listening to Jen. Get inspired to be your most creative self. Welcome back to the Children's Book Author Podcast with me, your host, Elena Page. And look, normally I use a lot of specials or I use a very interesting, what is the word? I've suddenly gone blank. Like a descriptive word. There's a word for that. An adjective. That's what it is. But today I'm going to use the word privileged. I am super privileged to have on the show today a children's book author and so much more, Jen Storer, who is an acclaimed children's book author. She's written so many titles. We could have an entire podcast on all the books that she has written for children, but she is also the founder, and I love this word, Chief Inspirationalist at girlandduck.com, where she teaches the art and business of writing books. She also has a membership club, the Duck Pond, and look, she does so many things. We're going to have the best talk ever. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thank you, Elena. I'm super excited to be here.
Where do I begin with you? My gosh, look, let's start at the beginning. Tell me how you ended up writing children's books, of all things.
Oh, gosh, it was a bit of a how much time have you got? It was a convoluted journey, but basically I had a midlife in my 30s. I had a moment where things went a bit adrift, and my husband left, and I had a baby, and I had been a nurse up until that point. And so at that point, I thought I need to really start pursuing my dreams and what I'm passionate about, because obviously the other stuff hadn't been working. And so I decided to do a degree in literature, and I went back to school. And so, I enrolled at university at Monash Uni in Melbourne, and I did a degree in literature. And as I was coming out of that degree, as I was graduating, I was like, well, what am I going to do next? And just by a series of fateful events, a friend of mine was working for a children's publisher in Melbourne, and she said, why don't you come and do some work experience with us? And so I was basically in there tidying up shelves and and then sort of worked my way up, and my strengths were very much in creative development. And so helping other authors with their stories and with and ideas and generating ideas and stuff like that. And so I just developed and it was a boutique children's book author, so book publishing. So I just got really, really caught up into the whole beauty of children's books. I had loved books as a kid, but until then I hadn't really considered it that deeply, that I would really forge a career in it. But it was just so beautiful, and just meeting all the illustrators. And we used to work on really big projects, so for the education market. So, there were some collections that were like 76 books, little full colour readers, and we'd be coordinating all the text and all the illustrations. And it was just a stream of illustrators and authors all day, every day. And it was just so stimulating and exciting and beautiful. After a couple of years of doing that, I just thought, I want to write my own stories. Yeah, so I did. And that was the next sort of part of the journey, yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I really feel strongly about when I observe you. I shall say that because that's what we're doing, really observing other authors and their journeys.
Totally.
To me, it feels like you're someone who, and I'm going off track, but I do that, don't I?
You warned me, didn't you?
Yeah, I did warn you. I always warn my guests. But it's like you sort of grow into the next bit, and then you grow into the next bit, and you grow into the next bit, and you're a real grower. Like you push yourself to the next element of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's
Does
true.
that come naturally to you, or is that something that you sort of wait
It's a great question. I'm a life coach as well. So I had a discussion with a client just last week about this whole thing, and just sort of talking about there's no growth in the comfort zone. There's only comfort. And comfort's nice for a while. But then the urge to grow, the urge to expand, and I think that's a universal impulse in every human being, it just pushes you forward. Now, some people suppress that. Other people just can't resist, and I'm one of the people that can't resist. I want to do the next thing. And I've always been a person who I can't consume art as much as I want to do art. So, if I go to a gallery, it's not enough for me to stand and look at the art. I want to run home and have a try. I want to have a go. I read a book and I want to have a go. I see a film and I want to get a video camera out and have a go. Like I'm very much a participant rather than an observer and a consumer. So, yeah.
I love that you just said that, because I find myself saying the same thing and people look at me like, what is wrong with you? Like I'm watching the actors on the stage and I'm like, yeah, it was cool.
Totally. My bedside table, I've got Howard Fine's acting book, because I'm so fascinated by how they pull it off. Like, what are they doing? What's going through their minds when they act? And so acting, again, is another art form that I'm really interested in. And I go down the rabbit hole with everything. Yeah.
So you love to express yourself.
Yeah, totally. But I also love to encourage other people to do it and help them free themselves up to do it and tell them not to wait for permission. Your life is your permission. You've been given the gift of life. That is your permission to create. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like I just need to sit in that and just hang up now, because I just go off and meditate on this. Like this, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's actually, I feel like we've really started the episode, we'll call it that, on such a profound note, because I feel like what you just said underpins everything else. We can talk about what are you writing and how are you writing and la, la, la. But if you haven't got that piece and haven't seen yourself, understood that part of yourself, then sometimes you get a bit lost.
Yeah. It's all about mindset too. When I first started Girl in Dark, I honestly believed that everybody wanted the technicalities of how to write. And I was focused on telling them, oh, you do this and you do that and you structure it this way and blah, blah, blah. But after I'd been in there for a while and working with people, I realized it's way more than that. It's more about mindset and hanging in there and learning how to deal with the inner critic. All those things are ongoing forevermore. And we need strategies and we need community and we need inspiration. That's why I called myself a chief inspirationalist, because I realized that that's what people need. They need someone to hold their hand, metaphorically, and lead them through. Yeah, because it's tough. The creative journey is very, very tough. And you can find out the technicalities just by a textbook or Google, how do I write? What does structure mean? What's a copy edit mean? And only Google will tell you that stuff. But she's not so good on the inner critic.
Right. Having said all that, I realised, but hadn't realised when I asked you to be on the show, that I had read your book a few years ago now. The book, let me look down, See Me Jump, 20 Things I've Learned About Writing Books for Children. And do you know, back, because, I'm very much self-taught, still learning, and I'm like confused, like everyone's saying, don't use adverbs, don't do this, don't do that. There was a whole lot of don't.
Yep.
And then I found your book and it was like a breath of fresh air. And I only realized this morning, I'm like, oh, she's the person who wrote that.
I love that. That's so gorgeous.
It's like exactly what you said. It gave me permission. I'm going to start in the weirdest place, but there's actually a chapter in there, or part of a chapter, that says you're allowed to use adverbs.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yeah. Look, I think too, I know a lot of my creative journey is I can credit it to Julia Cameron. So, it was that moment in life when a friend gave me The Artist's Way, and it just opened up so many doors for me and made me start, I saw creativity in a whole different light. And so it really affected how I think about creativity, how I create myself, but then how I went out to help others as well. We're a community. We are a community, and we were saying this off air. I believe we're very much a spiritual community, because art is such a spiritual practice, art and writing. And because it's a communion, you commune with the divine. It is, you are expressing through, the divine is expressing through you. When people say they get into flow, that's what's happening. They're in flow with the divine. So I believe there's so much more to creativity than just knocking off a few sentences or,
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said that, because, we did also have a discussion off air about how before I became a children's book author, I, was a psychologist. But actually I was a bit of a hippie psychologist, right? Like in the sense that I'm, very, very spiritual, and I do, like you, believe that there's something greater that's coming through. I honestly don't feel like if I just sit down and go, I'm going to write a book, like it doesn't come the same way as it does when I kind of let go to something bigger than me. Whether that bigger than me is inside me or outside me, I don't know, but it's definitely something bigger than me. So you talk about that in all the things that you do. You don't hold back. Like you don't, kind of limit yourself.
No.
How did you get to that? How did you get to that?
I got to that I've always talked about the intuitive, that how creativity is so largely intuitive, right? So I was at the Abbotsford Convent for 7 years. I had a studio there. And one day, one of the authors, an adult writer, came knocking on my door, because I was always the geek with loads and loads of, books. And I was always like, lay on my couch and we'll have a little session. And he had just been shortlisted for the Miles Franklin Award. And as part of that, they were inviting him to teach workshops. And he was beside himself, because he was a practitioner, not a teacher. There's quite a difference between those two beasts. Anyway, he came and he said, Jen, how do I teach something that's mostly intuitive? And it just landed for me, because it was just, that's the truth. So So lots of people, God bless them, they try to teach creative writing in a very linear left brain way. And you can have breakthroughs with that. I'm not dissing that, no shade, totally no shade. But you can't leave out the intuitive side, because that's where the magic is. That's where the connection to the divine is. So you ignore that and you come up with all this dry, unoriginal, tight, restricted sort of work. But when you invite intuition in, then you start to get into flow. And intuition can be developed. This is what I try to get across to people. It can be developed, and it's largely developed through play and through loosening up. And as you said, not looking at all the don'ts. It's good to be aware of those. They're helpful. But if that's all you're looking at, you're missing out on half the process.
Right.
The intuitive part of writing, and you get more intuitive the more you do it. It's just the way it is. It's
like
just
anything.
The whole thing is intuitive and it's experiential. Yeah. And I wrote a blog post about my experience of learning how to do a narrative arc, construct a narrative arc in a story. And I likened it around my first trip skiing. Oh, God, I hate skiing. Trust me, I'll never do it again. But I went skiing, snow skiing, and the whole thing was the same thing. I knew before I went skiing, I had everything worked out. I'd done all the lessons in my brain and been told this is how you do it and blah, blah, blah. The moment I got on that slope, I was just all legs and arms and all akimbo and on my ass the whole time. So it was just, I had to experience getting up on the skis and getting on the slopes. And it's exactly the same with writing. And it's exactly the same in that you have to do it over and over and over again. But then you start to get in flow, and then you start to get intuitive, and then you know where things are heading.
That is so well said. And I have this experience constantly where I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this really fantastic book. It's going to be like this and like this and like this and like this. Yep. 50 years is sitting in my head with this thing. And then I go to write it and I'm terrified. And I actually think, I'm having a free counseling session here, people, come along with me. I actually think that it's because I'm trying so hard to be like, not intuitive, like, I'm going to be a good writer, damn it. And I've planned this, and then like the intuition and the logic go boop, boop. And then I have this freeze until I let go into my intuition. And then this completely different story comes out. And it's about 50,000 times better than whatever I was thinking about for 6 months was. And I constantly coming against this. I don't know. And I'm actually very intuitive and very intuitively developed, but still this happens. Mm-hmm. Can you explain?
It's because, you are depending on the left brain, the logical brain, to do a task that the poor thing is not equipped to do. God bless it.
I love that. I love that.
It's a tool for solving problems. It's a tool for doing maths and working out what time you have to be at such and such. That's what the brain is good for. And when we ask the brain to do intuitive work, it tries so hard, and it just can't do it. And then we start to punish ourselves and we say, I can't do it. Okay, we see the left brain as us. That's entirely us, but it's not. It's just a little tool. It's like expecting a hammer to be a paintbrush. It's just not going to happen. You have to get into flow, and you have to let the intuition. And what I really love about what you said is a better story comes out than the one that you thought. And that's the other thing about stories. They're tricksters. They have many faces, and you have to be prepared to accept that when you go into the creative process, that something other than what you imagine is going to come through. There's going to be lots of surprises, and part of the intuitive skill is to learn which surprises to go with and which to reject and when. So there's this push and pull going on. Yeah.
Ooh, that is so I feel healed. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do. And I really genuinely do, because, it's a great gift to me to have someone with your skill and expertise in writing. Like, you have written so many amazing books that have, are literally critically acclaimed. And then for you to give permission to my intuitive side, which is really rare, I find that a great gift, and I hope the listeners take that as a great gift. Definitely go check out your courses and all your offerings, because it is rare to find somebody who really can encourage our whole selves.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like such a judgmental space sometimes. Now, that could just be how I feel it. But, like I've written something and then someone goes, oh, it's terrible, or this bit's bad. And it probably is. But in order for me to continue growing and experiencing my own growth, I feel like I need kind of a different form of permission, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes great sense. I remember saying to a friend way back when I was starting Girl and Duck that, because I did this series of videos where I answered people's questions. It was called Q&Q Friday, and the show ran for a few years. There was about 115 videos in the end. But one time I said to my girlfriend, I think I might do a show where I paint my face blue. I'm blue in the face over this, like this intuitive piece. You're trying to convince people that they need to free themselves up. They need to stop looking at the market. They need to stop listening to what publishers want, which is not the publisher's fault, but, rumors get out there in the industry. One publisher says one innocent thing and then it becomes a rule, and people marry themselves to those rules. So they're looking in the wrong direction. And that's why, of course, around Girl and Duck, we developed that saying, do the work. You have to do the work, because the work will teach you. It will teach you, not necessarily all those other extraneous stuff. Yeah. So, I've just been harping on about intuition and, flow ever since I started. Yeah.
So going back to what you said earlier about that trickster and how to tell the difference, like what is that difference?
A lot of it is courage. Like, it really does come back to courage, because you have to have the courage to try different things and experiment. So, for instance, when I was writing The Accidental Princess, which is a junior fiction Enid Blyton sort of inspired story, while I was writing that book, two characters wandered into the story, and they were these goblin girls, and they were really edgy and cool, and I really loved them. But in the end, after playing with them and getting to know them a little bit, I sort of said to them, "You don't belong in this story. This is the wrong story. Off you go." So I parked them, and I knew I'd come back to them. And then I came back to them in The 14th Summer of Angus Jack, which was a middle grade novel, where they were right at home in there. So it's not about pinching it off and making quick judgments. It's about experimenting and having the courage. People think it's wasting time. It's not. It's not wasting time. It's the process. It's the work. This is the work. Making these decisions is the work. Yeah.
Making these decisions is the work. Oh, I need to literally go and do more work on my gallbladder and liver, who are the decision points in your body, and what I struggle with, making decisions. But it's all about the decisions.
Sorry. And that's the other thing that I'm always stressing too, is that as a writer, you are a problem solver. That is what you're doing all the time. You are always solving problems with yourself and your inner critic and all that sort of stuff, and your attitude and your discipline and all that. But you're also solving problems in the story. The wrong characters come in at the wrong time. Someone behaves in a way that you didn't expect. Or all that. How am I going to deal with this? It's all problem solving. Even if you try and plot your story in advance, the problem is not solved at that point. It's just beginning. Every step of the way, it's a problem to solve.
So there's a lot of surrender.
A lot of surrender, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
I'm thinking very deeply about this. Hence
I can see that. I can see the bits turning over.
You can, because you know me, I go a million miles per hour, but and if I slow down, there's a reason. And so it's as you say, like, you're a problem solver, and writers, a lot of the time in Facebook groups and things, they're like, here's the way. Do this way, and then you can start churning them out. And I go, oh, yay, the way. Oh, no, doesn't work. You know, a bit like diet or something, you know, like, here's the diet. Follow the diet and you'll look good and feel great. But doesn't work, because we're so nuanced and we have such variation. So it's kind of like you've got to take all these models or things and then find your way through it. And the way might change for you, right?
Totally. So on my website, there is a free little course called 5 Ways to Write a Book. And in that, I discuss the different ways that people use to approach to write books that I've noticed over the years. And so there's the plotter, the pantser, the hummingbird, and what I call the Swedish chef. And then which is the way I write, and then the 5th way, which is your way. And that's the other thing that I'm always trying to encourage people, is to take ownership of their creativity and take ownership of the way they do things. And the only way that they're going to get to the point where they can take ownership is by doing it, not by being instructed by others about how it should be. So, so I had that experience at the beginning of my career where I had the textbook and it said, first you do this and then you do this. And so I spent ages trying to write. I was actually trying to write a screenplay according to the book. And in the end, it was the rubbish that it was just so embarrassing. And I just thought I couldn't write. I thought, I'm not a writer. I've had this urge to be a creative writer, but I'm not, because I can't do this thing. And I gave up. I gave up for about a year. But then the urge was still there, you know, try again, do something else. And so I went back to it, and then I played more, and then things started to come out.
You played more.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah. I let my humour come out too. The other thing is, you know, we do often, when we come to writing, we have our heroes and we want to emulate them. Okay, so, you know, one of my desires at first was to write like Helen Garner. Well, that wasn't going to happen, was it? But, you know, like it just, that's not who I am. I'm not gritty. I admire that writing and I love it, but that's not who I am. That's not what wants to come through my pen. I'm playful and a bit irreverent and, you know, funny, and I love scary and gothic and all that sort of stuff. So that's what comes through. I can't dictate to my creativity, you are going to write, you know, Cosmoleno. It's just not going to happen, because it's not who I am and it's not true to who I am. And again, that's confronting. Like, that is a lesson in personal development right there. Having to admit that your strengths are not in the field where you hoped they would be.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get an entire pinboard with like quotes from everything you've said and fill it and just have it there. It's amazing. You know, normally I sort of take the answer and I've got the next quote. With you, I'm like, whoa. I feel like we're sort of going all over the place, but we're not. We're actually going so deep and so high. And it's like, I feel like if we get, listen, listener, if you get these pieces right, as woo-woo as they sound, then all the rest will just
fall into place. Yeah.
Because we tend to start in the opposite direction. We tend to start in like, how do I write a sentence? And those things are 100% important. Totally. But it's like that, isn't it? It's like a sandwich.
Yeah. Yes.
You have this.
It is a sandwich, and the middle part is really mushy and really hard to navigate. I like that. That's a good analogy.
That's a great analogy. And the middle part is really mushy and hard to navigate.
There's also surprises in there. Yeah.
And surprises.
And textures. Yeah.
Yeah.
And flavors.
Which over time if I've heard this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, you gain the discernment to know which is right, which is wrong, where something belongs, where something else belongs. But that can only be gained by doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And playing.
Yeah. Put those skis on, get on the top of the slope, and away you go and see what happens.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
There's this quote directly taken from your book, and it says this. It's about finding your voice as an author. And it says, I realized that our choice of voice actually affects our imagination. And it's coming back to what you just said about how you wanted to be like Helen, but that's not who you are. That's not your voice. And if you try to do that, your imagination is going to shut down or be limited.
Totally. Totally. That's when things become stiff and stilted, is when you're dictating the voice. Yeah, voice is I could write a book just about voice. Voice is so important to your success.
So how do you find it?
Again, through play, through determination, through courage, through letting go of your expectations about how you thought this was going to be, letting that go. That's how you get into voice. So I think in that instance, I might have been talking about Truly Tan, was when the light really went on, because I had written most of the first book of Truly Tan and I wrote it in the third person. And when I sat back and looked at it, I thought, well, yeah, this is nice. It's quite sweet. But there was a part of me that was like, there's still, it's still not quite, it's not doing it for me. And so I went back and I started, first thing I did was I wrote a diary entry in Tan's voice, first person. And that's when I hit the gold, because that's when I let her come through my pen with all her quirky observations and all her, she gets her words mixed up sometimes. And, it was Tan, not me. I didn't have to take responsibility for that, People are not going to laugh at Jen's story because she doesn't, her grammar's so offbeat. It's Tan's grammar that's offbeat. So that, like all these sorts of things that are in your brain. So that really freed me up. And that's when I discovered, and that's Truly Tan took off then, the story took off. Everything took off because she was telling it. Again, and then it's when I realized, oh my God, it's the voice. With the voice is coming all the imagination, because the voice is that direct line, it's that direct access to the creative flow. And sometimes the voice can be third person and it can be very authoritative, but that's part of the imaginative process as well, is choosing that voice and playing with that voice,
So they're like real people, these characters.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, because, my very first novel was The Magician's Convention. And when I wrote that, the intention, I want to go back and slap myself, but doesn't matter because that was where I was at. My intention was lovingly cuddle myself. There we go. I am improving, Jen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Every day in every way.
Holding me to account. Thank you. I need to be held to account. If only more of my people I interviewed held me to account. In any case, I wrote that, and at the time my thinking was, oh my gosh, I am like such a healer, counselor person, and I can't be a children's book author if I stay like that. So I'm going to write something that's like a proper children's book, like the most stupidest things happening, stuff happening everywhere. And it was this, oh my gosh, crazy. I think it's crazy. Some people, when I say that, say, I love that book. And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. It was a moment in time. And I love that about my books. I try not to go back and change them because they captured a moment in time. And that moment in time is just as relevant as every other moment in time. In any case, that moment in time, that's where I was at. So then I went on and wrote other books that were more true to myself. But now I'm coming back to finish that series and I cannot connect with it. I can't connect with it. And most importantly, and the reason I'm telling you this, when you were talking about Truly Tan and about how then you almost really met her, you went, oh, it's actually you, Tan, like here you are. Now you can, like you said, almost channel her through, almost flow her through onto the page. I hadn't met my characters. I made them up. And they're not real. So I'm almost like sitting here going like, are they going to become real, or do I have to just say goodbye to this project?
Yeah.
So that distinction is actually, I feel, really important, and why I'm bringing this story up.
Yeah, yeah. And so many books serve different purposes. They serve purposes that we don't expect them to serve. We always want each book to be the book. But there are apprentice books, and we need to be grateful to those books, because they taught us. You either fail or you learn. No, sorry, you either succeed or you learn. Get that right. You either succeed or you learn.
Right.
They're not failures. They're part of your journey, and they came to teach you something. And so, yeah, that can be that's one of those decisions. Will I let this book go? Will I take the lessons that it taught me and be grateful for those lessons, and then bring those lessons to the next thing, which will be even better, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but absolutely. That is beautiful. Will I succeed or will I learn? And not being afraid for it to be the learn.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah.
It can be really hard to come to terms with. Yeah. Again, that's that whole thing. The other thing too that I always say to people is, when you first start writing, there's a lot of stuff that needs to come through your pen, that you know, and a lot of voices that have got to come. You've got to write them out. So you've got to write the school teachers out, the ones that haven't influenced you well. If they're a good teacher, then that's awesome. But a lot of the time, you've picked up a lot of rules and regulations at school. You've got to write out, maybe the nuns. You've got to write out society. You've got to write out the critics. And you also have to write out your own snobbery, because a lot of us bring literary pretension to our work, and then it's like, oh, that's not what's coming through. Again, go back to the Helen Garner thing with me. It's just never going to happen. It took me a long time to accept that's not the creative gift that I've been given. It's a different gift.
Right.
It's still a gift.
But it's still a gift. So it's a bit like I think it's DreamWorks. Maybe I've got the Pixar's one of them. They have this rule where they brainstorm all, these fantastic ideas, and they brainstorm and they put all these things on the board, and then the first 20 or 30, they erase them. They don't care how good they are.
Yeah.
Because they're just actually repurging.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to what I said about, your left brain is like it's a hammer. It's not a paintbrush. And so the first things that come out are the hammery things, and then afterwards. So yeah, that's a cool thing that they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is definitely a pinboard. Your left brain is a hammer, not a paintbrush. Oh, magical. So tell me a little bit about, so you've got your courses, and they, fantastic. Go check them out, everybody, because, you're seeing your teacher here online. She knows a lot of stuff. And even adding to that, there's then your membership. So tell me a bit about that and how that came to be and what that serves, how that sort of fits in.
Okay, so the Duck Pond is it's the membership, and it's basically about being in it for the long game. And so because it is a long game. And so rather than just doing a 4-week course and then being left cut adrift, the membership provides that soft landing place where you can keep coming and tapping in and learning and building your community and building your skills. And so every month I bring in a professional from the field, an author or an illustrator, and they do a masterclass. And I also myself, I do once a month a group coaching call in Zoom, so everyone comes together. And those group coaching calls have evolved over time as well. So they used to be basically a Q&A, but now they're more of they're not really a sacred circle, but they're more intentional. And we write together. I set writing exercises, and we set goals together. And then we also have a Q&A, and anyone who's struggling or got a problem can talk about it there in that space. So we do that once a month. And again, it's coaching. That's what coaching is. It's me holding space for you while you grow and develop. Yeah, so we do that, and then the Facebook group there's always little bits and pieces going on in the group as well. But another thing that's evolved within that space as well is I started off just bringing in amazing people from the kids book industry. But then I started to realise, or I had realised for a long time, that we need to be more holistic in this, in our approach. So throughout the year, I also schedule in people from other walks of life. So we had Lisa Kordoff come in February to talk to us about time management and juggling, and she was amazing. So she's a transformational coach for women, and it was just the best. It was such a great workshop. I've still got heaps of notes that I refer to all the time. In May, we've got Elle Steele coming in, Paralympian, and she's going to be talking about self-belief. She's a gold medalist and totally woo, absolutely charming, just adore Elle. So she's coming in May to talk about self-belief, because self-belief is, we have to have it. We have to have it. We have to have it to hang in there. And then, in July, we've got Jo Parker coming in, and she's a really experienced public speaker. So she's going to help people with tips about public speaking and how to go out there into it professionally and do your speaking gigs. When I started, it was just like, here's a packet of chips and a compass, off you go. It's like, I was terrified of public speaking when I started, and there was no one there to help, no one there to encourage, and so so we're bringing in Jo and so on and so forth. And then in between all those times, we have amazing people like this month in April coming up. We've got Michelle Madden, the commissioning editor from Penguin Random House, doing a Q&A, and we've also got Freya Blackwood doing an illustrator's class as well. So there's amazing people come and help us and work in there as well. So it's a really extraordinary space. I've got to say, I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. And from what I'm hearing, so, it's about improving the writing, but it's really also about improving the writer or the creative.
Totally, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, like you're actually coming back to the person, because
person as a whole.
It's the thing we write, but it's who is writing it. Yeah. And that's the person that often gets overlooked.
Yeah. And it's about instilling confidence in our creators. Confident creators create better stuff. Confident creators who aren't constantly second-guessing themselves, who aren't intimidated, who aren't shy, who aren't timid in their work. They're the ones that succeed, and they're the ones that bring us really, really cool stuff.
They do. I'm looking around, I'm like, I have a statement for this. I'm writing a book, totally change of topic. I'm writing a non-fiction book called Creative Genius at Play.
Oh, wow.
And its subtitle, which took me a few months to come up with, and there was a hive mind. There was my little group of women where were like, is this it? They're like, nah, doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel right. But, it is, I remember let me see if I remember it off by heart, since I don't have it in front of me. It is discover your creative confidence.
Okay.
Innovate in style and make art that matters.
Oh, wow.
And there were three.
Is there a waiting list for the book? Can I?
Then I need to join the duck pond. So I can become the book as I write the book, which is often why we write things, right? Because we're becoming something.
Yes.
We're becoming the next level of ourselves.
Yep.
So we often don't write what we're already experts in. We often write what we are aspiring to become better at. But, that's what reminded me, because that comes first. It's discover your creative confidence, because without it, you can't find your true style, which is why I've got innovate in style, meaning in your style, not anybody else's style. Yeah. And then, make art that matters to you.
Yeah.
And then ultimately it will matter to other people.
I love that. That's a really great point too, about make art that matters to you. Because, again, you're focused on the wrong thing if you're trying to make art you've got the left brain that, that's got this, or write a book that's got this really big, intense message, and you're focused on the message, but you're not focused on on the art. Mm-hmm. Often that's when people fall down. They get didactic. They get stilted. The work becomes, like a textbook. The thing is, everything that you put out, every piece of art you put out into the world, whether it's writing or illustrating or whatever it is, it will teach something. Mm-hmm. It will express something. It will connect with somebody. The act of doing it is the instructional part. So a lot of people, especially when they come to Kidlit, they're really hung up on message books, really hung up on it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with message books. They're great, but they've got to come from the heart. They shouldn't come through you as well, I could do this, and that would be really good, and the publishers would pick it up, and then I would be the famous person who wrote the blah, blah, blah book. That's not how it works, in my experience anyway. It's more about what comes from the heart, and you will instruct when you work from the heart. You will instruct and inspire and encourage and support. You'll do all sorts of magical things just because you worked from the heart.
Yeah, so come back to the heart space.
Yeah.
So coming back to this confidence bit, do you find that it's something that needs to be constantly looked at? In other words, we don't just get confidence and we're okay, let me ask you this. You're the great Jen Storer. Come on. The things you've written and the stuff you've done, you are the pinnacle, right? So do you wake up every morning and be like, I am the great Jen Storer? There's nothing I can't do.
Okay, Elena, I need to stop you right there, okay? I actually have a confidence coach at the moment. I have a confidence coach. All right, I work with a confidence coach. Confidence is ongoing in every area. You'll get into one area that you feel quite confident in after, for me, 20 years. You start to think, oh yeah, maybe I'm okay at this. But then as we were talking about at the beginning, you want to push yourself, you want to express more. So I'm moving into the business coaching world now, business mindset and all that sort of stuff. And I lack confidence in that area, even though I've been running Go on Duck for 6 years and I know a lot about business. I still don't know how much I know, and I'm not confident in how I'm going to express that or how I'm going to guide people through that. So I've got a confidence coach, and we work together all the time. I'm in a group with her, and she's in Ireland actually. So it means really late calls or really early calls, but that doesn't matter. I'm learning from her, and she is an ex-actor and performer, and so confidence has been a huge thing for her, very successful actor and performer. Confidence was something that she realised that she needed to nail very early in her life, and it's been an ongoing thing, learning and building, and yeah. It's all this mindset stuff. Like I said to a client the other day, and I'd learnt this from somebody else too. It's having you have a shower in the morning and you wash your body, but you also wash your mind. Otherwise, you start to stink. You have to keep your mindset clear and clean and positive and can do, and you need to be constantly nurturing it. Otherwise, you just start to give up, and the negativity and all the bad stuff in the world just crushes you. So it's really important that you be very, very mindful of your mind and your emotions and your confidence levels and all those sorts of things. Yeah.
And I guess as children's book authors, to some extent, we're really kind of very mindful of our inner child. On some level, I think
we're so fragile.
Yeah, I do. I think
absolutely.
People become children's book authors because they actually want to sort of heal their inner child and go back. And yet that we treat ourselves the exact opposite than what we often say in our books, be kind. And then, I said, I'm going to go back in time and slap myself. It's whoa, dude. You're not being kind to yourself. So catching yourself in those moments.
Yeah. Constant vigilance. Yeah. I heard someone say, be the porter at the door to your mind. So you've really got to monitor what you let in. You got to be a door bitch. Am I allowed to say that on here?
Be a door bitch. Yes, children don't listen to this podcast, so that is okay. But that's so good. That is so true.
Yeah.
But sometimes we're not like that, right? Sometimes we do let those things step in.
Totally, all the time.
And that's why, for example, as you say, what I'm hearing from you is that even though you are the great and mighty Jen Storer, you still have, a coach yourself. So you never stop growing or learning. Hence, we always need coaching and learning and nurturing and guidance.
Absolutely.
You might have gotten that penguin deal of, $50 million. I don't know if that's ever happened, but anyways, you might still need to be in a group like that where you're supported and coached to your next project.
Absolutely. And of course, with success often comes imposter syndrome, and that's a big one, and we all have to deal with that. And, discomfort that you feel when you think, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I fluked it. Maybe everyone's lying. Maybe, maybe, whatever. Or what if they find out, what if they find out that, I'm not fully qualified, or I don't, whatever it is, all the doubts, they're all there for all of us.
Do you find, because, like in my prior life, I was the spiritual teacher, the guide, the guru. I'm really going big with this. I was, the person, people would come to the groups and look up to me. And then I therefore have a lot of trouble seeking the help of others. Because when I seek the help, now I've got to become the little student, right?
Yeah.
And in children's book, and I'm making this up as I talk, in children's book writing, there might be a lot of teachers, or like you said, a lot of people with a lot of knowledge or wisdom to share, or, things that they want to get out there, or maybe they're just writing fun books and think, I don't need a group or a community or support. In other words, I'm very bad at receiving the help. Great at giving it, but not so good at receiving it. And I notice in myself that sometimes I can, almost lock myself away in the ivory tower and be the little hermit and be like, I can do this alone. I can totally do this alone. And then I can't.
Yeah.
But I can't ask for help. Do you, and I'm being really honest, do you find that happens a lot? Do you see some of that in your groups, people who are coming in with that?
Can you just keep going? People who are coming in with what?
With that wanting help, but not necessarily wanting, they want the help, but they're not very good at receiving that.
Yeah. Or they're not good at admitting, they feel like they have to admit that they want help. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. For me, it's often in my marketing, it's actually trying to convince people or demonstrate to people how much they would benefit from this.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I can't, you can lead a horse to water and all that sort of stuff, but I know, I'm there, I'm witness to this. For 6 years, I've been witness to the changes in people within that group, in that community. And I see it all the time, every day. But I can't convince a lot of people, or a lot of people will just sort of be kicking tires and walking around. They won't take that plunge. That breaks my heart. Because when people don't answer the call, or they resist it, or they push it away, or they dismiss it as something silly, what is life if it's not about creativity and expressing yourself and taking the risks and all that sort of stuff, and having adventures, whether they are just emotional and creative adventures? That's where the juice is. But
and giving yourself permission.
Giving yourself permission.
I'm speaking directly from experience now. I'm literally feeling into myself. That part of me that goes, I don't want to join a group. I do, but I don't.
But that is also, sorry, Elena, that could also be part of your sort of maverick personality.
Right.
Thank
you for saying that.
Okay. So a lot of mavericks feel that they don't want to be part of a group because they want to go it alone, and that's fine. That's fine. But often a maverick can get something from a group. They don't have to participate. This is what I say in some of my marketing too. I say, you can come to the duck pond, but you can sit on a big picnic blanket with a cup of tea and a piece of cake, or, if you like, a beer. You can just sit on the picnic blanket and just soak up the goodness. You don't have to be involved. But there is group magic. Oh my God, there is group magic in every group I've been in, whether it's the Duck Pond or the coaching groups that I'm in as a coachee, as a client. It's being around other people, and in my case, it's always usually women, other women achieving or failing or sharing or being vulnerable. There's a magic in the group.
Yeah.
That is, unless you experience it, it's very hard to relay what that actually is.
Well, let's assume I'm a maverick. Thank you for saying that. Let's assume that's the case. I still feel that there would be, and there has been when I look at other experiences, like you said, where even if you're a maverick, there are times when you surrender and actually allow your vulnerability, because it is, I'm telling you, I can feel it, it's vulnerability, to join in that space, that a transformation still does happen, even to the mavericks of this world, in a group dynamic. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. And also, like, a maverick can then get what they need from a group and then go off and start their own group. They'll often do, and mavericks like to start their own thing. Look at you. You got your own podcast. Like, they do the thing. They're happy to go out on a limb. They're happy to do things differently. So, yeah.
I was in this group. There was a different interview, if you go back and have a look, that I did with Vin Jiang, who's this amazing communication expert, and he's brilliant, really brilliant. I can't remember what episode now, but it's one of the episodes. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should join this group." And I went, "Oh, not a group. I can't join it." And she's like, "No, really, you should join this group." So I'm like, "Do you know what? I'm going to join this group." And I'd never done this before. I made the decision when I joined this group. And what was required in this group was that every 2 weeks you had to do the video activity in the Facebook group, like live, or you'd get kicked out.
Oh my God, that's hardcore.
Hardcore, right? And so there wasn't a lot of people. There was maybe 350 people in the group. And every so often a whole bunch would be culled and then new people would come. But I made the decision. I thought, I'm going to try something different. Like you said, rather than kind of being this like, no, I don't need a group. I'm actually going to go into this group and I'm going to be hugely participating. So every single video that's made, I'm going to give a comment. Every single one. So I made that decision. And a reason I'm telling you this, audience and Jen, is that sometimes it is how you decide to turn up in a group. Because when I did this and entered the group, and it took about an hour a day to give a comment for every single thing, something magical happened. I improved exponentially in my own ability as a communicator. B, I became very well known, and somehow people started to think I was a bit of an expert in there, though I knew nothing about communication. I really didn't. Well, not at the time. And the third thing was I truly felt connected to everyone, and it didn't feel pretend. It was like I really care about these people and them succeeding, and then I started to succeed. So there is something magical about groups, and part of the point I'm trying to make is it's also the decision of how you want to enter these things that can determine what you get out at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a great anecdote, and it's just the best. I love hearing that. But sort of what you really did was what I talk about too. I just scribbled it down. You took inspired, courageous action, and that's something that I'm always teaching people, especially in my business world. You can't just sit back. You have to, when the inspiration hits, you have to take the action. You have to, and it's usually courageous. It feels courageous. It would have felt courageous for you to not only join a group, but then really participate at that really visible level. That's courageous. Yeah. And then it just has this effect, this ripple effect. Yeah. So it benefits everyone.
So do you see the members sort of, get the courage to do things they may not have done before, like put in submissions or, and
they'll put in, I submitted to blah, 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 or I pitched at blah, 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 or I bought a ticket to Kid Lit Vic, or I did this or I did that. Absolutely. There's that magic and that connection. We had a picnic earlier this year. I just, because, post-COVID, we hadn't done anything in real life for ages. So I just sort of said, let's have a picnic for anyone who's around at Eddie Gardens in Melbourne. And it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful to connect and just sit around on blankets and talk and laugh. And it's community. So that's what community is. And it's what's sadly lacking in the world today is community. But there's so many communities popping up all over the place now, aren't there, because of social media.
Yeah, and you've got to find your right community. Like, it has to feel like, it gels with you. Hey,
yeah.
But
what I'm really passionate about with the Duck Pond too is that it's dynamic, that it keeps growing and keeps changing. Again, so that's why we've changed things up in terms of the masterclasses and in terms of how I show up every month for my coaching. That's changed. So that it's not just the same old thing every month. Yeah.
How do you manage all the things that you do? Like, you sound like, you're a machine, like you're just pouring things out. Like,
It sounds like that, but it's not. I actually have pretty chill life, actually. I've got a whiteboard. I'm looking at it there. I chunk things down. I choose what's most important. I take inspired, courageous action, and I'm very mindful and I'm very clear about what I choose to do and what I don't do. I work very much with myself. I know myself very well now in terms of my makeup and how I operate and how much energy I have or don't have. And so I work within that. But I'm lucky, I'm older now. My kids are grown up. It's not chaotic anymore. So I can dictate that a little bit more. Yeah.
Do you write every day still?
No, I'm not writing at all at the moment. Yeah, yeah. I've pulled back right back from writing. I'm writing for fun. So I'm halfway through a middle grade novel. I'm halfway through a fairy series, but I'm just playing with them. My whole focus at the moment is on teaching, coaching, that side of it. And that was a hard decision. That was a really hard decision. It took a few years to get to that point. But I realised that where I am now in my own life journey, it's more important for me to do these other things, and which is, the coaching. I do one-on-one consults, and I just love the one-on-one consults. I just love that. I love seeing even within 1 hour together, people get transformations and aha moments, and you just feel like you're contributing. And again, at my age, that feels really important to me, to be at this stage in my life, to be able to give back to that level and share. So I'm 61. So my archetype that I work with a lot, my confidence archetype that I work with a lot now is the lighthouse, because I really, really strongly identify with that. So the lighthouse is strong and is a guide, but you can't get too close.
Right.
Because if people get too close to me, then I'm depleted. Yeah. So I have to be very, very careful about boundaries, and that can be tricky, but it's not that hard. But so that's sort of the archetypal, and I work a lot with Queen energy too.
I love that, using the archetypes as a form of, like, who you're being.
Yeah,
like how
I've actually just been working on an archetypal sort of presentation within my slow coach group, because I teach women in business, and I'm just putting together some archetypes just based around the tarot. So the Queen of Swords, Pentacles, I'm having a blank now, Cups, and oh God, Wands. Anyway, so I'm writing archetypal Queen energy, business energy around that, and constructing this whole sort of presentation around that, so that people can see themselves in different queens within the tarot, and then tap into that archetypal energy and the shadow side of that as well, because there's a shadow side. So there's a shadow side to the lighthouse, which is the twinkle star. The twinkle star is sort of the shadow side that you get caught up in shiny object syndrome, but you also dim your light when you sense a brighter light around you. These sorts of problems you often can identify really strongly with the undiscovered genius sort of archetype. So there's this balance that goes on. Yeah. So so I'm playing with that at the moment for my business peeps. Yeah, to help them get clearer on where they are in their journey and who they want to connect with and where they want to take energy from. We're not locked into one archetype. You would know all this. But, yeah, it's good to identify with one strong one for a while and work with that. So I have pictures of lighthouses all around the studio and on different books and stuff that I write notes in and stuff, just to remind myself of that beautiful energy and of the stage of life that I'm at, which is very much about guiding and shining a light and being a beacon. Yeah.
That's fabulous, because if you go off track, you just come back. You just come back.
Yeah.
And I love that you are open to using any number of tools to get the solution, that breakthrough. And I think it's a beautiful place I could talk to you all day, but unfortunately our time has run out. But it's a beautiful place to end back up, because, what I've really taken from talking to you today is that as writers, creators, to be open to all these beautiful tools that bring us back to ourselves and help us express.
Absolutely. Being open is so important, and having an open heart as well. Yeah, totally. It will lead you, and it will inspire you, and it will guide you, and it will nurture you. All those things. Again, beautiful left brain, fantastic hammer. There's so much more going on. We're so much more complex than we let ourselves be.
I think that's
richer and more powerful.
It's going to have to be the title of this podcast. I think your brain is a hammer, not a paintbrush, with Jen Storer. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Elena. This has been so much fun. The best way to start a day. I've loved talking to you.
I've learned and grown, not grown. There we are. Need an editor.
You might have been channeling a character then.
I might have. Grown is a good name, actually. I'm going to write that down. Thank you. Excellent. But I really have grown so much just from speaking with you, for an hour. So I'm sure the listeners will gain immense value. And, of course, all the links to Jen will be in the show notes. Go check out all her fantastic offerings. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being inspirational on today's show.
Thank you, Elena. It's been a pleasure.
Did you find that interview valuable? Great! Now be an awesome human and go and leave a review, because it helps the podcast out so much. Want to read the show notes? Check out thechildren'sbookauthorpodcast.com. Want to find out more about me, Elena Page? Find me at elenapage.com, or come and say hello on social at Elena Page Books. Until next time, keep writing and keep learning.